name is Nuria Diallo Padro, Chief Executive Officer of Continued Success Global Consulting. Throughout my career, I've supported aspiring entrepreneurs, local startups, and community partners. I've worked with small business owners looking to realize their business ideas by equipping them with practical business advice and financial tools. I've managed projects in Ghana, Chile, Belize, Spain, and the United States. Welcome to Fundamentals of Responsible Leadership for Entrepreneurs. This lesson is entitled Framework for Ethical Team Building. In this lesson, we'll focus on how entrepreneurs should approach team building and personnel management to recognize and avoid conscious and unconscious biases. We'll talk about why discrimination and nepotism are a path to failure, and we'll look at the importance of diversity and inclusion. But this is not just about how you, the entrepreneur, behaves. All of these points are relevant for all aspects of your business, both internally and externally. To begin to move toward greater self-awareness and more inclusive best practices as professionals, we need to consider what bias is, understand its different forms, and how it manifests. Bias is prejudice or favor, which can be for or against a person, group, or thing compared to another, which usually leads to unfair conditions. Bias can either be conscious or unconscious. Conscious or explicit bias consists of attitudes and beliefs that one knowingly holds on to about a person, group, or things, which usually stems from a perceived threat. Conscious bias can include giving preference to a relative or someone you know well during the hiring or promotion process. This is also known as nepotism. This practice leads to ethical and legal challenges that can prove very costly to a business. It's important to be informed of the ethical and legal implications bias can have in your recruitment and hiring practices. Unconscious bias or implicit bias is harder to identify because one is not usually self-aware of the prejudice or favor one holds towards a person, group, or things. The bias will then manifest through three typical behaviors: microaggressions, microiniquities, and triggers. Microaggressions are behaviors and practices that reflect the implicit or explicit bias a person holds. Examples of microaggressions include avoidance, negative body language, or speaking negatively or differently towards another person or group to degrade their physical appearance, abilities, experience, voice as it relates to influence, words, authority, or credentials. This is extremely harmful in the workplace because it leads to low employee morale, distrust, lack of opportunities, and a toxic work environment. These same behaviors can be found in the recruitment and hiring process, which leads to the loss of top talent and client acquisition. Microiniquities are specific phrases or word choices that degrade, divide, or judge a person, group, or thing. Phrases or questions such as, "When I see you, I don't see color." "Where are you from?" "You are so articulate." Reflect bias and should be removed to enhance communication focused on a nurturing and inclusive environment. Triggers are situations, topics, or inherent biases that activate the use of microaggressions, microiniquities, and defense mechanisms. We should not wait to address bias, especially unconscious bias, as a reaction to seeing it in the workplace through triggers. Rather, we should be proactive to create an inclusive environment through awareness, education, and best practices. Becoming aware of your inherent biases is a step towards becoming more open and inclusive as leaders and entrepreneurs. Now, let us explore a specific question managers and entrepreneurs often have when dealing with employees or clients: how to manage so-called difficult people. Let us first consider, what makes them difficult? Is it a matter of their presence, their perspective, or communication styles varying from yours, and that makes it difficult for you to manage the way you believe you can? Or is the person truly being difficult, pushing back, so as not to move a project or goal forward. Consider assessing your own biases before addressing an employee you might consider as difficult. This can be a particular challenge when you're working on a deadline. Therefore, it's in your best interest to be proactive in your self-assessment and ongoing commitment to learning to explore your biases, communication styles, and leadership styles before you're placed in this position. There is a framework for addressing diversity and inclusion in the workplace, known as the Netter Principles. These are 12 principles that were developed at Cornell University to get us to think about what diversity and inclusion means to us and how to create a more inclusive work environment that embraces diversity across different groups, levels, and situations in an organization. At the core of these principles are the ideas of ethical leadership and ethical decision-making. Any framework remains theoretical until you commit to consider the principles and situation from a fair and inclusive viewpoint. As leaders, we need to intentionally grow in moving our unconscious biases into a place of awareness to be able to change our own actions, reactions, and positions. This will allow us to facilitate a more inclusive and efficacious workplace. The 12 Netter Principles are based on working toward a more inclusive work environment. Consider your current professional repertoire and organization. Do you ignore, strive toward, or achieve these principles? They are a demonstrated commitment to diversity across all formal and informal levels within an organization structure and systems. A holistic view of employees, which recognizes the whole persons with identities and personal family lives outside of the organization. Access to opportunity creates and nurtures opportunities for all employees to have equitable access to professional and personal growth. Accommodation of diverse physical and developmental abilities are offered through intentional efforts to provide reasonable accommodations that eliminate barriers to workforce performance, employee participation, and access to the workplace and its offerings. 360-degree communication and information sharing flows from and in all directions and across all levels of responsibility. Equitable systems of recognition and reward encourage and celebrate diverse contributions and achievements across all levels of responsibility. Shared accountability and responsibility refers to a shared investment in upholding the organizational values and goals that support an inclusive environment within and throughout the network and organization in which an entrepreneur coexists. A demonstrated commitment to continuous learning that leads to greater personal and professional development, increased collaborations, and a more fluid organization that supports innovation, diversity, and inclusion. A participatory work, organization, and work process in which the individual and collective skills include aptitudes and experiences beyond the traditional academic or professional trainings offered. The alignment of organizational culture and process that understands that, like bias, culture can be implicit and explicit in how it manifests throughout the organization and should align with the mission and values of the organization and its employees across all levels of responsibility. Collaborative conflict resolution processes empower employees to seek collaboration, inclusivity, and resolution based on mutual respect. And finally, a demonstrated commitment to community relationships through constructive alliances with local organizations to support diverse initiatives and opportunities to eliminate bias or barriers. These concepts can also be applied to the entrepreneur, regardless of whether you run a small business or are scaling locally, regionally, nationally, or internationally. As entrepreneurs, we need to also be aware of our own biases and strive to be more inclusive in how we work with our clients, communities, and partners. It will be a determining factor in how your business model takes shape, how you interact and sell to your target markets, and it will allow for you to be more intentional in your ability to grow your business. Confronting bias starts with one self-assessment. As a leader, you can make an impact to create a more inclusive environment. After you have reviewed all the lessons in this course, you can test your knowledge and earn a certificate.